Thanks to the Duke of Bedford from Woburn Park in the late 1800s, we have been inundated with Muntjac deer. They're small, stubborn, and absolutely determined to eat their way through our garden. Now, I tried shouting at them, installing fences, then electric fences, and eventually installing Unify cameras with AI animal detection to help me deter them, but nothing seemed to work. Then one night, while poking around Unify Protect's alarm manager, I found webhooks, and they are brilliant. A few electronic parts later, along with a few lines of code, a little LED lit up every time a deer walked past the camera. That LED became this, Announce for Unify, a PoE-powered, weatherproof audio announcement system. Let me show you how it works and how I built it.
Get out of my garden. Go away. Get out. Go on. Go away. I said go away.
The concept is simple. Unify detects an event, animal, person or vehicle. It then fires a webhook into the device's IP address and plays an MP3 from the onboard SD card. The whole thing is managed via a web interface, which is served from an ESP32 S3. There's no app, no cloud, and certainly no subscription. Here you can see my landing disclaimer page. Because I am making this open source, I've included this so that anyone using my designs knows that they do so at their own risk. As soon as you press Accept and Proceed, it takes you through to the main page. Once on the main page, there are a variety of system controls, such as Global Amplifier Enable and Disable, 10 Quick Play buttons, which are each mapped to webhook URLs, which you can paste straight into Unify's Alarm Manager. There's also the ability to edit the button labels for ease of reference later on. Scrolling down, you can see we have mute control of fixed periods from 5 minutes to 8 hours, as you may have activities occurring and it's easier to mute the box from within this interface than it is to go into Unify's Alarm Manager and pause the alert. Another useful feature is that of the daily volume schedule. If you live in a busy area like we do, we have to have the unit set to max during the day. However, in the evening, where there is very little surrounding noise, we can have it automatically turned down. There may be a need to have your amplifier disabled or enabled during certain times every week. And within this table, you can see how you can have that automatically set so you don't have to think about it. And finally, you get to the time zone. Just choose from the drop down and hit save. Here we have files, or what I lovingly call Track Manager. Within Track Manager, we have a variety of controls, such as playing the chosen MP3 so you can remind yourself how it sounds. You can rename, download, and delete. Please note, these first few tracks are titled 001 onwards. The system is designed that anything starting 001, 002 is automatically mapped back to the 10 quick play buttons on the main page. If I scroll to the bottom of Track Manager, this is where you'll see the ability to upload your files. We are now on the network page. When installing your unit, you would have made a decision via a jumper on the main PCB to tell the unit to either connect to the network via Ethernet or Wi-Fi. Please note, however, the unit derives its power from Power over Ethernet. Once connected, you have the ability to use DHCP or static. You can provide a host name to the unit to make it easier on your network. As you see, I've got on here unit1-garden.localdomain. You can set your Wi-Fi credentials if you are on Wi-Fi. And once configured, you can reboot the system. I have actually installed two Announce units. The first is in the garden, which, as you know, was initially designed to scare off the deer. However, we live by a river, so we have configured additional webhooks, so should anyone step onto the key heading after hours, an alternative announcement is made. So one system, multiple scenarios, that was always the intent. The second unit is installed on our driveway, and like the first, it has proven very effective at ensuring visitors are aware of our security measures. I'm now going to cover my key component choices, my favourite part. But before we do, here is my completed design, the most complex PCB board I've designed to date. Now remember, I am a maker, not a professional, but thanks to YouTubers such as Andreas Spice, Great Scott, Phil's Labs, Dronebot Workshop, Phil Chapman, 6G and many others. I am very happy with my progress. The reason for sharing these videos is on the hope that others can be inspired like I was to become a maker. Now, what I've done here, instead of showing a photograph of the main PCB, I've actually opened up the 3D render from the package I use for design called KiCad. The main microcontroller for this project is the ESP32 S3, which is a great little device. However, it's not the device I started with, as I normally use the ESP32W. However, when I was coding, I found my sketch was getting rather large, and by moving on to the S3, I had plenty of headroom. Moving on was my choice of Ethernet controller, as when considering my project, I knew that I wanted it to be able to be on Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and the device I settled on was the WIZnet W5500, which in the Arduino world is used quite extensively. And that's important because it came with plenty of libraries. Scrolling further down, we then move into power, and you'll see my power circuitry which comes off the Ethernet connection. Now, I decided to use power over Ethernet, which is 48 volts delivered by a single cable, and I'd never done PoE before, so this was going to be a first. To start with, I purchased several PoE evaluation boards and learnt the protocol before designing anything. Most were analog devices. They worked well, but the datasheets which I was referencing were very complex. I then started looking at ST Microelectronics, and they had much clearer documentation with full guidance on PCB design and application notes. This is where this device, the PM8805, came in, and I must admit I was rather thrilled with the finished product. You may have noticed when I showed you the actual PCB, the large capacitor bank which is at the bottom of the board. Well, one thing the prototyping could revealed was the standby current was modest, but when the amplifier fired for an announcement, it was spiking at around 2.2 amps. So I incorporated this capacitor bank which pre-charges and absorbs that surge, so the power over Ethernet systems never takes the full hit. Moving further around the board to other power circuitry, you can see my first buck converter, which is an ST Microelectronics L7987. This delivers the 12-volt rail which the amplifier circuit needs, but it also feeds into the second buck converter, which is delivering the 3.3-volt rail, which the other digital services need, as well as an analog 3.3-volt for the Ethernet controller. This little array here, which you might be interested in, are 3 indicator LEDs for my different voltage rails. Now I'm using a shunt circuit with a transistor to basically tell me that the voltages using a resistor divider are within tolerance of what the circuit needs. Now it's a little bit of overkill, but just bear in mind, I love designing electronics, and these sort of things you wouldn't normally see post-production, I suppose, but what the hell, there's quite a lot of fun designing this stuff and putting it together. Finally, as we move around the PCB, we get to the main amplifier, which is a Texas Instrument TAS5760L. I have used this in previous projects and I absolutely love it. With Phil Schatzman's audio tools library, which is an I2S library, interfacing this with an ESP32 is absolutely easy, really lovely product. Moving to the top, we then get to the trusty Silicon Labs USB interface to CP2102. This is what I use to program the microcontroller. Also a bunch of LEDs, jumpers and switches that while prototyping I decided what I needed to do to indicate that things were working properly on my board, and a bit like the power indication, completely over the top. Again, you wouldn't see it post-production, but it's just nice when coding that you can use these tools to help you fault find and bug fix, etc. And when designing the circuit board, I just like seeing them in the finished product. Now, you might be asking, where and how on earth did I make all of these hardware decisions? Well, to be honest, plagiarism. And my golden rule, do not reinvent the wheel. There are many dev kits and modules, all with proven component selection, so I always start there. There is also a clear fundamental reason for doing this, and that is the need for libraries when it comes to coding. However, I do make alternative choices at times, such as the TA amplifier for one. But my baseline is to always look at what other people have chosen. As you design and build more circuits, you'll gain more confidence. And as they say in the skiing world, it's great to go off-piste. Now, when it comes to PCB design, I would strongly suggest you watch as many videos as you can from Phil's labs. So I'm now going to walk you through my PCB design. Well, I should say I'll walk you around because my design is following one of Phil's particular instructions, which is to keep a short path of power as possible and definitely keep your power away from your digital circuitry and your analog circuitry. So you can see here that in the bottom left-hand corner, I've got my power over Ethernet input, which then the 48 volts comes through to my capacitor bank and my first buck converter, which is 12 volts. This then goes through to my second buck converter and my voltage indicators, which I mentioned earlier in the video, and separates off the 3.3 volts for analog and the 3.3 volts for digital. So all of the power circuitry is effectively at the bottom of the printed circuit board. The 12 volts only needs to go as far as the digital amplifier, which is just above that circuitry. And then the two 3.3 volt rails carries on around the board to the digital interfaces, the ESP32, the SD card, the USB interface. And then the analog voltage goes through, as well as the 3.3 digital voltage, to the Ethernet controller. And there's definitely a separation, as you can see, with the copper pores between these areas. So I will just cover some things on the PCB. There's obviously too much to cover in this video to talk about the whole thing, but you can see here I've got my keep out zone, which is where the antenna is from the top of the ESP32. I was particularly challenged by the differential pairs coming from the transformer and Ethernet connector. I spent quite a lot of time on this. Pleased to report that it actually worked first time. I will be honest, I was a little bit nervous once I sent the board away for manufacture. Looking at the PM8805, this circuitry had to really follow the data sheet from the manufacturer. It's quite remarkable actually. It's actually 4-layer board and each of the layers is quite complex. If I turn off the top layer, go to layer 2, these are both internal layers, and then the bottom layer to consider with this particular IC, especially width of tracks, etc. Because the amount of current this can actually carry, which is quite substantial. So if I now talk about the couple of mistakes that were made when designing the circuit board, it's always a bit nerve-wracking when you send things off for manufacturer. I did actually get the Ethernet connector the wrong product. So when you plug the Cat5 connector into the socket, you have this mounting hole and there's not much clearance from the edge of the board, and here it looks like a lot of clearance, but actually if you use the wrong connector, it comes all the way out, and then if you've got the cable, this is then hitting the side of the enclosure. So that was quite a big mistake, and if and when I come to redesign this, I'm going to have to change this connector completely, which will have a huge knock-on effect to this area and my differential pairs. So I don't relish redoing it, but if I am to make more of these boards, it would be daft to not change this design to make it easier for installation. Now for another mistake that I made, which could have been catastrophic, but I managed to figure out what the problem was. Here you see the power over Ethernet circuit, which comes in from the magnetics. There's the coil, differential pairs over here going to Ethernet controller, but this is the main circuit here. And while considering the data sheet, I decided not to use the power good line, which you can see here. So power good comes out and I didn't terminate it. Now, the knock-on effect to that, if I go to the 12-volt buck regulator, again in here, I didn't use the enable line properly as I should have done, and power good here is not terminated. And then I had the same issue when it came to the 3.3 volt. Now, the knock-on effect of all of that is that when you connect the Ethernet cable, the PM8805 doesn't actually come up because there's too much draw on the circuitry, so the protection within this chip stops the whole thing from booting. Now, this vexed me for quite some hours. And it was only by chance when I was using my scope that I figured out what the problem was. Now, the fix was, I must admit, I was quite pleased with the fix actually. I decided to increase the delay capacitors on the input side of the 12 volt and 3 volt lines. So by using just a small calculation, there is a few seconds, well, milliseconds in fact, for capacitors to charge. So the circuit boots now, where the PM8805 starts because the 12 volt buck regulator doesn't start, and then 12 volt buck regulator starts, but the 3.3 volt regulator doesn't start, and so it concertinas. It's all very quick so you can't tell that with the human eye and my voltage indicators, but it then allowed for each of the circuits to come up in time, then enabling the integrated circuits, the ESP32, the amplifier, and of course the WIZnet controller. So when designing the circuits, just take comfort that your board may not work, but whatever you do, don't write it off, because if you've put as much effort into the design as I have, there is usually a fix which you'll be able to apply to the board. So we're right by where my garden unit is installed. You can see it's in the corner, and this is where the Muntjac deer tend to come through. You can see that the plants are being decimated by the little buggers. And so that is a Hammond waterproof case, and I designed the PCB to sit right in with the WIZnet waterproof speaker that sits nicely in the front. And here you can see the other unit installed neatly behind the two Unify cameras that look up our driveway. Well, that's the end of the video. I've tried to keep it as short and tight as possible. If you did like the content and found it of interest, please remember to like and subscribe, and better still, please let your maker friends know. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to read them below.